The notification lit up Marcus Chen's phone at 2:47 a.m., pulling him from the spreadsheets that had consumed his evening. He'd been CEO of Chen Technologies for 8 years now, built a billion-dollar empire from nothing, and sleep had become a luxury he rarely indulged. But it wasn't a business emergency that made his hand freeze over the glowing screen. It was a name he hadn't seen in 3 years. Sarah. Marcus, I know I have no right to ask. I know what I said when I left, but I'm desperate. The baby needs formula and I'm $200 short on rent. I've tried everything. Please, just this once. His heart hammered against his ribs as he read the message again and again. Sarah had a baby. The woman who'd walked out of their tiny apartment, who'd told him she couldn't watch him fail anymore, who'd said she needed someone stable, someone who could actually provide a life worth living, was now a mother. And she was asking him, of all people, for money. The irony tasted bitter. When they were together, he'd had nothing. She'd left him in that cramped studio with second-hand furniture and dreams too big for his bank account. He'd begged her to wait, promised her that his startup would work, that the 18-hour days would mean something. She looked at him with exhausted eyes and said, I can't eat promises, Marcus. I can't pay rent with your dreams. Now he could buy 1,000 apartments without checking his balance. Now he had everything except the one thing that had mattered, someone who'd believed in him when belief was all he'd needed. His finger hovered over the reply button. Pride told him to ignore it, to let her feel the weight of what she'd walked away from. She'd made her choice. She told him he'd never amount to anything, that he was wasting both their lives. Why should he care now? But something else stirred in his chest, something that had nothing to do with revenge or vindication. He thought about a baby, innocent and hungry, caught in the crossfire of adult choices and consequences. He thought about Sarah, desperate enough to reach out to someone she'd once deemed a failure. He thought about the man he'd become and the man he'd promised himself he'd never stop being, no matter how much money filled his accounts. Without overthinking it, Marcus transferred $5,000, not $200, $5,000. Then he typed, sent. Take care of yourself and the baby. You don't have to pay it back. He set the phone down and tried to return to work, but concentration eluded him. Questions swirled through his mind. Who was the father? Was Sarah okay? What had happened to bring her to this point? The woman he'd known had been proud, almost to a fault. For her to ask for help meant things were truly dire. 3 minutes later, his phone rang. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. His thumb trembled slightly as he answered. Marcus. Her voice cracked, thick with tears. There's been a mistake. A terrible mistake. His stomach dropped. What do you mean? That message wasn't for you. I was texting my ex, Marcus Thompson. You're both in my phone as Marcus. I haven't looked at your contact in years. I didn't even know you were still in my phone. And now you've sent all this money and I can't. The explanation tumbled out in a rush. She'd remarried 2 years ago, had a daughter. Her husband had lost his job 6 months back, and they'd been struggling. She'd reached out to an ex-boyfriend from before Marcus, someone who owed her money from years ago. The message was never meant for him. Marcus felt something shift inside him, a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. Keep the money, Sarah. I can't do that. You know I can't. That's not. We didn't end well, Marcus. You don't owe me anything. Honestly, after what I said to you, after how I left, you'd be justified in hating me. He leaned back in his office chair, staring out at the city lights sprawling below his penthouse office. Do you remember what you said to me the night before you left? Silence stretched between them. Finally, she whispered, I said a lot of things I regret. You said that I cared more about changing the world than about building a life with you. You were right. His voice was steady, without accusation. I was so obsessed with proving myself, with building something that mattered, that I forgot the person right in front of me mattered more. You leaving was the wake-up call I needed. It hurt like hell, but it made me human again, made me remember why I was working so hard in the first place, not for billions or recognition, but to make life better for people, to help people. Sarah's breath hitched. Marcus, You don't understand. I was cruel. I told you that you'd never succeed, that you were delusional. I threw your dreams in your face because I was scared and tired and I wanted you to hurt the way I was hurting. And now you're exactly who you said you'd be. You made it. And I'm the one asking for help. Life is strange that way, Marcus said softly. But here's what I've learned with all this money, Sarah. It's just numbers on a screen if it doesn't do something good. You have a baby who needs formula. That's real. That's what matters. Not my ego, not our history. A child needs to eat. I'll pay you back every cent. I promise. Number. His tone was firm but kind. Let me do this. Not for you. Not even for us or what we were. For your daughter. Every kid deserves to have their basic needs met. Let me be the kind of man I always wanted to be, the one who helps when he can. He heard her crying now, not the controlled sniffles but deep, shaking sobs. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve your kindness. Maybe not, Marcus admitted, but your baby does. And maybe that's the point. Maybe kindness isn't about deserving. Maybe it's about being human enough to help when you can, regardless of history or hurt. They talked for another hour. Sarah told him about her daughter, Emma, 6 months old, with Sarah's eyes. About her husband, David, a good man who'd been laid off from his engineering job and was drowning in the shame of not being able to provide. About how they'd burned through savings, how medical bills from a complicated pregnancy had crushed them. About the pride that made asking for help feel like swallowing glass. Marcus listened, really listened, in a way he perhaps hadn't when they were together. Back then, he'd been so focused on his own dreams that he'd missed the fear in Sarah's voice, the exhaustion in her eyes. He'd been so certain that love should be enough to sustain them through poverty that he'd dismissed her very real concerns about survival. I'm sorry, he said finally, for not hearing you back then. You were right to leave. I wasn't ready to be a partner. I was too consumed with becoming someone to actually be someone for you. No, Marcus. I'm sorry. I should have believed in you. I should have seen what you were building instead of just seeing what we didn't have. I was so focused on security that I couldn't see the man who was working himself to death trying to create it. We were both young, Marcus said. We both made mistakes, but we survived them. That's what matters. Before they hung up, Marcus had a proposition. My company has openings in our engineering division. Have David send me his resume. No promises, but I'll make sure it gets a fair look. And Sarah? That 5,000. Consider it a baby gift. Use it however you need. Formula, rent, medical bills, whatever helps. Why are you doing this? Sarah asked, her voice small. After everything? Marcus smiled, though she couldn't see it. Because somewhere in the universe, there's a version of us that worked out. A version where you stayed and I learned balance. We don't get to live in that version. But I can still be the person I'd want to be in any version. Someone who helps when he can. That's the only success that actually matters. 3 weeks later, Marcus received an email with photos attached. Sarah, her husband David, and baby Emma. They were smiling, standing in front of their apartment. The message read, David starts work at Chen Technologies next Monday. We're caught up on rent. Emma's nursery is fully stocked. But more than any of that, you gave us hope when we'd almost lost it. You reminded us that people can be good, even when they have every reason not to be. Especially then. Thank you for being the man you always were underneath, the one I was too scared to wait to see bloom. You've built more than a company, Marcus. You've built a legacy of kindness. That's the real billion-dollar success. Marcus printed the photo and placed it on his desk, next to the awards and magazine covers. When people asked who they were, he'd smile and say, a reminder of what wealth is actually for. He'd learned that success wasn't measured in market value or stock prices. It was measured in moments like these, when you had the power to help and chose humanity over hurt, kindness over karma. The mistaken message had given him something money never could, the chance to prove that the dreamer Sarah had left behind hadn't been lost in the billionaire he'd become. That beneath the suits and success, Marcus Chen was still the man who believed the world could be better, one act of compassion at a time. And that maybe, just maybe, Being kind to those who hurt you was the ultimate measure of who you'd become.